Hey, good morning. We get another incredible week. Happy Monday. Hope you had an amazing 4th of July with family and friends. And in this week's video, yes, I still did it on a Monday, even though most of you probably have work off, which is great because now you have more time for this video. So what we're going to talk about today are the 7 steps for success in anything. Yes, anything. And why? How can I say anything? Because almost everything in the world, and really everything in the world, has some sort of development process. It starts somewhere and either improves or erodes. And just like we're born, we either grow or we die. And a plant either grows or dies. A business either grows or dies. A career improves or declines. Like everything has that process. And so what we're focusing on today are the 7 steps that we can focus on. And the way that we're going to apply this is think of a skill. So whatever it is that you do to earn a living, think of this and apply it throughout the rest of this video. Apply it to what you do professionally. How are you making money? What value are you bringing to the world and contributing to society, to the company, to your clients, your customers, your business, your team, whatever it is? How are you making money? Because that is how you want to apply these 7 steps. So the 7 steps that we're going to cover are study masters. And studying the masters doesn't mean just one individual person, but it also does not mean 100 people. And so we'll talk about how do you narrow it down to the very select few people who are doing what you want to do at a mastery level. So we want to study the masters and then we want to replicate the masters. We don't want to have to come up with everything ourselves because it's going to take too long. We don't want to do that. So then we're going to go into massive action based on our replication of the masters, the strategies and the action plan. And then we want to track our progress and results. We want to learn from feedback. We want to then take that feedback, because we did learn from it, and restructure, iterate, and evolve our strategies and actions. And then finally, only after we hit mastery level, only after once you can hit the same results as the masters themselves, only then should we be trying to creatively improve and innovate. And a lot of people try to jump the gun way too quickly on creatively improving and innovating when they're not even on the same level as the masters themselves. So I'm excited, and let's dive in. All right, so let's start with the first step, which is studying the masters. Now, these people could be people within your world, or they might be people that are so, quote, successful that you'll never actually get the chance to personally meet these people. And if that's the case, that's okay. They have books, they have courses, they have coaching, they have seminars, they have conferences, they have online programs, they have masterminds, study groups. They have so many different ways to learn and absorb the knowledge from these people. And so that is whatever it is that you do professionally, you need to figure out who are the masters at what I do, who have mastered my trade. And those people are the people that we need to learn from first, and until we can produce those results, those quality results that those people are getting, we should not be trying to create stuff on our own. And I'll give you an example at the very end about Isaac Newton. So the first and most important thing is there's their experience and then there's our experience. And the opportunity costs for both of these are different. The investment required for both of these is very different. And so when we think of investing in something or making a decision to improve our lives or to grow or to make more money in whatever it is that we're doing, there's always going to be a sacrifice or an investment, and then there's always going to be a return on that investment. And the difference between, and these are not my words. These are not my words. So again, this is me learning from other people. The difference between poor people and wealthy people are poor people focus on the cost. Wealthy people focus on the return on investment, the value. And so that is how we need to make this decision between working with people or studying from other people versus doing everything ourselves. So the investment, take a second and think, what's the investment in order to learn from other people? What do you have to do, or what do you have to invest in order to learn from other people? So if you're thinking about it, it's probably money. Yes, it takes money to invest in other people's knowledge. Now, unless they're giving it away for free, but very few business and enterprising people are just taking their 4 or 5 decades of information and knowledge that they invested their whole lives, which we'll talk about. They invested their whole lives in structuring this knowledge, whether it's in a book or a program or a coaching or a conference or a seminar where you travel and go visit them. Like, they've taken decades of their life in order to structure this, and then people expect to have to pay for it? Of course. And so there's going to be a monetary investment, but there's even more important is there's going to have to be a time commitment. And we're still going to have to take whatever it is that we learn from these people, implement it in our lives, and then also exert energy, because we need to be able to then take what they've given us and implement it. Now, then there's our own life experiences. And in terms of what's required or invested in order to learn from our own experiences is significantly more time and a lot more energy and fewer resources. So when we invest in other people's knowledge and study masters, we're going to have to pay money in order to learn from them. But that's going to save us an enormous amount of time, possibly decades of our lives. And we, as far as we know, we only get one life here on earth. So we want to save as much time as possible. So we save time, we save energy. But when we do everything ourselves, then we're investing significantly more time and energy, but fewer resources. And so if we want to accelerate our success, what we have to do is compress down the iteration cycles. And so in order to compress it down, that means we need strategies and actions that work. And so that's why the successful people in the world are investing in other people's knowledge. So then, once we know that, what are the primary benefits that we get out of investing in other people's knowledge? Well, there's a lot more than this, but I want to point out 4 primary factors that we get from studying masters at whatever it is that they do. So the first is we get a philosophy. Now, philosophy it's not some, I'm not talking about what is the purpose of life? Why are we all here? What I mean is you get a conceptual understanding of the thing itself. Now, I'll use a very simple example of finances. There are a million books written on how to, quote, make money. There are a million books on, another great example is sales. There's so many sales books or marketing books or all of those types of like self-help books, right? There's an enormous number amount. But when you learn from one specific person, their philosophy is how do they see the world? How do they comprehend things? How do they understand themselves, the world, other people, resources, investment, taking action, how you literally download how they think. And that is the importance of philosophy, is when you can think how someone else thinks, only then can you begin to replicate their results. You have to understand how that person sees and operates and moves in the world and makes decisions. So once we have an understanding of the world, then we begin to build a foundation. And the foundation is, once we understand things, then we can begin to create the base layer that we build everything on top of. Now, the biggest reason most people fail is they don't have a philosophy and they don't have a foundation. They literally spend their whole lives learning tricks, trades, little, get rich quick things, and I'll just do this and hopefully that'll work out. And they do these really short, week-long, month-long sprints, but they're just very tactical strategies that they're not built on a foundation. And imagine trying to build a building without a foundation, a rock-solid foundation. If it's built on saying that thing's going under, it'll look great for a couple months, but that thing's going under eventually. And that is how most people try to run their lives, is they absorb these quick, week-long or month-long things. Oh, this is the hot stock. Let me just throw my money in. And then all of a sudden, what happens long-term? Thing falls apart. And they just keep looking for the next hit, the next hit, the next hit. And so we need a philosophy and a foundation before any type of strategy or action is going to work. Because if we don't have these two fall apart in the long term. Now, they might work in the short term. They might work for a week or 2 weeks or a month or a couple months, but they're not going to last for the rest of our life. And what is the purpose of learning anything if it's not going to last for the rest of it? If you have to constantly rebuild, you can't compound. You cannot grow substantially. You can't stack success. And so we need these two. And only after these two are absolutely concrete and firm, then we learn strategy and then we develop an action plan. Now, some people say, well, all right, well, what if I learn from somebody, I read a book, I take a course, whatever, and I get these three, I understand, and they give me the strategy at a high level, but they don't give me a step-by-step what to do. Well, in that point, then what we have to do is, if it's not available, we have to reverse engineer their success, which is us trying to think through and figure out, okay, how did this person do what they did? And we have to kind of become detectives. So we take what they did and we start at think of it as this is their level of success and this is where we are. We have to reverse engineer how did they get to where they did. And if they don't give it to us, then it falls on us to figure this out. Now, that also requires time and energy, which a lot of people are not willing to invest, and that's unfortunately for their loss. All right, so now the second step is we need to take what we've learned from these masters and then replicate and apply it to our own situations. So our own careers, our own lives, our own relationships, whatever it is, our own skills, our knowledge, that's right, because we're focusing on what it is that makes you money. So your skills, your knowledge, your experiences right now. And so we need to take what we learned, so their strategy and their action plans, and we need to personalize them to whatever our current situations are. Now, the reason some people get so frustrated from training programs or books or courses or coaching or whatever is it's not verbatim, word for word, step by step, exactly unique to that person's situation. And so that requires that person to think. Thinking is hard. Thinking is difficult. It's not easy. And the highest paid people in the world are people who can sell, influence, and negotiate and think. Those are two incredibly valuable skills, and when they're put together, unbelievable things happen. And so, because if you think, you can create value. And if you can sell, negotiate, and influence, then you can actually distribute that value, which I talked about in a previous video. But in terms of this, learning from these people, it's not going to be 100% perfectly applicable to our lives. And so what we have to do is then take that knowledge and think and apply it to our own scenario, given the resources that we have, and given the level of our success, our intelligence, our career, our life, like wherever we are currently. So the action, and I want to quickly talk about the difference between a strategy and an action plan. So a strategy is a high-level understanding of in which order must big chunks of activities be completed. So think of like a part of an action like this phase 1 strategy. Phase 1 is going to have, 2, 3, 4, 5 big chunks of actions within it, where this thing must come first before we worry about anything else. So the strategy is the high-level overview of stages or phases of accomplishing things, of making progress in whatever it is that we're trying to do. And a very simple example is, however it is, whatever skill or knowledge or experience you are uniquely very talented at, you can develop a strategy for improving yourself, where there could be 1,500 things that you need to learn, but you can't learn all of them at the same time. And so you would actually need to strategize in which order am I going to learn these things. This is going to come first, and then this, and then this, and then this. So your strategy, you could develop a strategy for developing yourself. But then the action plan is going to be the individual step-by-step actions that you can read these actions and go, okay, I know exactly what to do. I'm going to do it now. So this is not really actionable. It's more of a high-level concept of this is how we're going to approach it, in which order. But the action plan has to be, you read it, you know exactly what you need to do, and you can actually go do it at that moment. So step 2 is we want to take what we learned from the masters, replicate it, apply it to our own personal unique situation in our lives and careers, and then we need to develop our own strategies and our own action plans. And the action plans are what we can read and physically go out and do and accomplish. All right, so now the third step is to actually take massive action. Now, I'm sure that this is something that you've heard plenty of times, and I want to just quickly touch on it because I know that you've already heard this. And where I've heard this is, the first time I heard this was through Tony Robbins. I've also heard it from Grant Cardone, and if you're aware of Grant Cardone, his 10X Nation, that's a big movement. So the most important thing is, whoever you've heard it from or wherever you've heard it, the rule, the application is the same. You need to take massive action. We need to take massive action in whatever it is that we're trying to achieve, because usually if we've never tried something before, we significantly underestimate what it takes to be successful in that thing. And so what we want to do is force ourselves to know that, okay, whatever I think I should do, I want to multiply by either 3, 5, or 10, because we need to be able to do significantly more than we thought is reasonable, because that is going to give us the margin of error for something that we've never done before, something we've never tried before. We're going to fail. It's not a question. It's expect to fail. If you've never tried something before, if you're brand new to something, you're gonna fail. And that's okay, because that's part of the process. It's to be expected. In fact, it's to be celebrated, because it means that you actually did something that so few people are willing to do. So few people are willing to try something new. And you immediately put yourself in a category of very few people, of non-average, non-mediocre people, because you're willing to go out and fail. You're willing to try something else. And there's a quote, I can't remember who said the quote, but it's, if you want to be successful, be willing to do the things that unsuccessful people don't do. And when you do 3x, 5x, or 10x, whatever it is that you're trying to do, if you want to improve your knowledge in something and you want to say, all right, I'm going to go read a book, read 5 books. If you read 5 books on that thing, I promise you are going to be significantly better off in whatever it is that you're trying to learn than had you only read the one. So we want to take massive action, multiply whatever your initial goal is by 3, 5, or 10, and then importantly are two things. Do not think. When you, the point in the process where you want to make all of your analyses, all of your thinking, your strategizing, laying out your action plan, and then making decisions, all of that happens before step 3. In step 3, you're not thinking. You're just doing. You're only executing. And this is the biggest problem that people have in their careers and in their personal lives, is they're constantly stuck in this limbo of, okay, I'm going to do this, and then they do a little bit of action, and then they start doubting themselves. They start doubting the effectiveness of the strategy and the action plan that they're the ones that created based on the replication of the masters who've said, this is what you need to do to be successful. And so people are stuck in just doubting themselves that whatever they said they would do isn't working. Well, it's not working because you haven't done 3x, 5x, or 10x of whatever that thing is. And I'll just use a very simple example, but sales. If you have not made, 100 calls, then, or 100 outreach messages, well then, yeah, I'm willing to bet you're probably not going to talk to anybody. And if you have not, or networking, so let's say you're going to try to transform your career, either internally within an organization, or you're looking externally to transition and you want to create your own opportunities. If you've only reached out to 5 people and none of them got back to you, it's not because people suck. It's not because no one wants to help. It's not because your outreach message sucks. It's not because you suck. It's because you've only reached out to 5 people. And a very personal example in terms of like our personal lives, our friends, our families, relationships is, if you have not found the person you want to marry, well, how many people have you dated? How many people have you talked to? How many people have you attempted to reach out to? So in whatever it is that we want in life, if we've only tried a very few times and we haven't gotten the result immediately, we as human beings, this is what we naturally do, is we naturally start doubting ourselves. And so do not think or begin to reevaluate your own strategy or your own action plan. Take that and just put it aside and just keep taking action until you hit whatever that number is, or whatever that initial action plan that you told yourself you would do it. Or a workout program. If you told yourself that you're going to do X number of days, then 1, do it for 3 times longer, and you will get the results that you want. And so do not start to doubt yourself or reevaluate your own actions or strategies. Just do it. And that's the second part. Focus. Just do the work. All right, so now in this 4th part, I want to talk about the main differences between impact and results indicators. And the reason this is so important is we must track our results and progress. And this is something that a lot of people do, is they'll take a lot of action, but they're not actually measuring anything. And so they don't know what results they've gotten. And because they don't know what happened, They can't improve. They don't even know if they're on course. Imagine trying to drive somewhere without a map. Well, how are you supposed to know how far you've gone, where the next exit is, what route you're supposed to be taking in order to get there, and how close you are to that? Like, it's a ridiculously old metaphor is sailing without a compass or any type of navigation. Most people live their whole lives without having any sense of direction of where they're going, and they're not tracking their progress at all either. And so the very first thing that we need to always have is impact indicators. And you can think of this as activity. So we need to know this is the action, the activity that we're taking that are driving results. They're generating the results in whatever it is that we do. And so let's just say, just to make it easy for everybody and applicable to everyone, is let's just say personal growth, personal development. So we could say the activity or the impact indicator is hours of personal development. So hours of PD, hours of personal development. So how many hours a week are you focused on developing yourself? Totally undistracted. It's not reading, and personal development is not just reading some random article online. That is, you're lying to yourself. If you believe that just reading randomly scattered articles all over the place, hearing 1,000,001 different opinions, that's not personal development. That is news. You're just gathering opinions. And so personal development is a structured form of learning. It could be a book, it could be a course, it could be a seminar, it could be a conference, it could be coaching, it could be whatever it is, but it's structured. And you're advancing and progressing through that structure. So this could be our activity, and then results indicators are the outcome. So this is activity, this is outcome. Now, the biggest problem is that a lot of people spend their whole lives focusing on results indicators. And a business example. So a lot of businesses freak out or stress or only focus on revenue, top line, and profit, bottom line. Well, revenue and profit are lagging indicators. They're just results indicators. They're retrospective. They look into the past and say, this is what happened and this is where we are today. Well, that's great for a snapshot decision in the moment. But we can't project on that. We can't forecast on that. What we need to know is what's driving. What is driving revenue? What is driving profit? What's driving? What is the activity? Because you could have the best numbers in the world or the best outcomes in the world, but if you don't even know what generated that, how can you possibly ever reproduce it? You can't. And so in anything in the world, whatever it is, we need to, yes, check ourselves, consistently measure and figure out what progress have we made, but this is not what's most important. The results indicators are not what's most important. Activity, impact indicators, drivers are what is most important. So I would challenge you to take a quick second and think right now in whatever you do professionally, think right now, what are your results indicators? What are you quote benchmarked on? But then think about what actually determines how well I do. What actually drives my performance? What activities is making me either good or bad at what I do? And how can I begin to track those activities? So now step 5 is focusing on learning from the progress that we're measuring, and both the indicators, the impact indicators, as well as the results indicators. We then want to be able to learn from them, study them, and figure out what happened and why, both good and bad. So I've laid out several questions that are relevant for really just about anything. So these are generic, but they can be twisted and applied to whatever it is that you're focusing on. But the first one, what worked well and why? So things don't just randomly happen. And there's a cause and effect relationship for everything. And so before we try to determine the effect relationship or the cause and effect relationship, what we first want to figure out is what actually worked, what went well, and then we want to ask ourselves, how come? Why did that happen? Do our best to understand what were the actions or the activities or the things that created this good ending result. But then we also want to ask what didn't work, and for the exact same reason, what really just kind of I was going to say shit the bed. What just shit the bed and why? What created that bad, terrible outcome or that total failure where it's like you see that and you're like, yep, don't ever want to have to do that again. Why? What created that? And then the third part, what patterns am I seeing? So things are going to be, depending on what it is that you're doing, there's going to be a lot of different outcomes. And usually what you might be able to do is back up and take a high level view of whatever it is that you're doing and begin to create these buckets. And you can begin to bucket outcomes or results into these categories. And those categories are really patterns. They're consistencies or themes that you're seeing across whatever the different outcomes are. So you can begin to see patterns, but then you also want to ask yourself and begin to challenge yourself, why do I think that these things are happening? Which is the cause and effect relationship. If I do X, I get Y. And you want to be able to apply that or do your best to figure out what is causing everything. And really quickly, a sidebar, in previous videos, I've talked about leverage. How do you leverage yourself? How do you leverage a team? How do you consistently improve and get more out of anything or anyone? And it's very difficult to move through that process of leveraging using tools, technology, automation. We cannot do that if we don't know what the cause is. If we do not know this cause and effect relationship, we can't systematize. And in order to build anything incredible, we have to have systems. So we must understand this relationship. And then we want to ask ourselves, what is the bottleneck or the chokehold? And for any system, let's say that you have this system here, and then you have this bottleneck and whatever. So this is a terrible drawing is what it is. But let's say that you have, all this great activity and activity, but then you have this chokehold here in whatever it is that you're doing. Well, you could have all of this good action here, all of this potential. I don't even know if you can see that. Blue is not working well. Let's try green. So you could have all of this going well, but then the moment you get to here, only that much is going to get through, and that's the amount that's also going to get through for the remainder. And so when people are failing at the outcome or they're not getting the outcomes that they want, there's usually going to be one or two things that are the main primary chokeholds or bottlenecks that are stopping them from getting the outcome. But in order to figure out why this is happening, you need to reverse engineer or backtrack through and analyze your feedback to figure out what's the plug. What is killing the rest of the flow, whether it's for your business, for whatever your job is or whatever your position is, whatever it is that you do, or also skills. So this is in terms of technical skills. So I'll use coding for an example. So there are a lot of programmers and coders out there that they learn all these tricks and trades, but like every now and then there's one key fundamental skill that they don't know, and it limits all of their ability to code at a next level. Or writers. If writers are missing a certain key strategy or a certain key skill set, well then it affects all of their writing ability afterwards. And so for you, think about your skills, your knowledge, and your experience and where you are today with how good you are at whatever it is that you do and how much money you make at what you do. Ask yourself, what is one thing that I could learn that if I learned that, holy shit, would I be much better at what I do? What is that thing for you? Because that thing, that's your bottleneck. That is what's holding you back. So once we identify this bottleneck, we then want to ask ourselves, how can I improve or fix it? And that's where the creativity and the ingenuity of figuring out, okay, this is what happened. This is why it happened. This is the biggest problem. And now we can turn into problem solving mode and go back into thinking again, okay, this is what I need to focus on. We fix it. And then once we open this back up, then we'll be able to fully flow all the progress that we want to eventually achieve whatever those big, ambitious, incredible goals are that we have for ourselves. All right, so now the sixth step is to iterate and evolve the strategy as well as the action plans that we're consistently taking for whatever it is that we're trying to master. So you can see here that these 5 steps just keep looping. And they loop until you achieve mastery. So mastery is, think of that as when you're able to produce the results that the masters are producing. So whoever it is that these people are that you're studying, you're learning from, you're absorbing their information, you consistently loop through this until you're able to achieve their level of success or their level of results and for whatever it is. Because if we cannot reproduce their success or their level of results, then we have not fully learned what it is that they do. And so we still have learning to do from them. It's like, think of a movie like the Kung Fu movies, where if you can't beat the master at the game, if you cannot beat them in, a Kung Fu or a karate championship or whatever, a duel, a standoff, if you can't beat them, then you're not better than them. And so why would you try to create or do something on your own if you can't even beat them? And so that's what we need to do, is keep looping through this until we're at that level. So we go from studying masters to replicating them, absorbing their philosophy, and then their foundation, their strategies and actions, and then we're taking the strategies and actions and applying them to ourselves, our own life and career situations, whatever it is that we want to achieve. We take massive action, and whatever it is that you need to do, multiply by either 3, 5, or 10. At this point, you're not thinking. You're just focusing on doing the work. You're focused. You're not reevaluating. You're just going to do it, do all the action, and only after you've done the action, then you look at what are the results and what progress have I actually gotten. And this is focusing on your impact indicators as well as your results indicators. And so once you have this data and this information, then you look at it, you study it, you analyze it, and you ask yourself those questions and think through, okay, what went well? What didn't go well? Why? What could have gone better? What's the chokehold? What's holding me back? And going through what's the cause and effect relationships. And then figuring out how can I improve it? How can I solve the chokehold, the bottleneck? And you consistently, once you figure out what that is and how to improve it, and how this kind of ties back in is once you know what the bottleneck is or what the problem is, then you can go back to the masters and ask yourself, how do they do it? How do they overcome this problem that I have? What is it that they do? What tools do they use? What resources? What strategies or approaches? And so you can go back to the masters and ask yourself a very specific targeted question to then later improve your strategy and action. So this is the final step, and we keep looping through this, and this could be years. This could be decades. This could be a very, very long period of time going through this process in order to get to where these people are. All right, so now we have the final step, which is to creatively improve and innovate only after you've mastered the results. You've achieved that level of mastery. So we can ask ourselves, have I achieved mastery? And you'll know, because you're at that point, if you've achieved mastery, you're able to produce the level of results that the people that you were studying or that you were learning from, you're able to produce their level of results. Now, if you can, then that is where you want to be able to begin turning on your creative brain. How can I make this better? And so there's a quote by Isaac Newton that I wrote down that I want to share with you. So Isaac Newton, who again, 3 laws of motion, people credit with him with figuring out gravity, the guy who saw the apple fall from the tree. So Isaac Newton said, if I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. And so if you look into how did Isaac Newton discover these 3 laws of motion, how did he achieve what he achieved? Well, he spent years upon years studying the best mathematicians, the scientists, the astronomers. He credits Copernicus with a lot of his, and Galileo Galilei, he learned an extreme amount from these people. And Leonardo da Vinci, he studied all those people. And so what happens is these people, only after they've mastered the philosophy, the foundation, the strategy, and the actions, and they can produce the results of the masters before them, only then can they begin to take all that information and compound it and mix and match it in ways that other people might not have before. And all of a sudden, they can optimize, innovate, and create and create more value that wasn't there before, or solve problems in a bigger and better way that have never been able to be solved in that way before, or an understanding of the world or a business or a client or a concept that hasn't been understood in that way before. But we cannot get there unless we can stand first on the shoulders of all the giants that have come before us. And if we have not achieved that level of mastery, then we need to get back to steps 1 through 6, because we cannot stand on their shoulders if we don't yet understand what it is that they were able to achieve and how. That is the important question, is how. And that's also why most people never achieve their dreams or never really do what they want to do in their lives or in their careers, is because they get stuck at the question, well, how can I do that? And because they don't see the how, that leads to them believing that they can't do it, that it's not possible. So if I were to challenge you and say, are you going to be a millionaire? Right now, you might have a couple thoughts in your head that are, well, maybe, maybe not. And the biggest question, the reason it's not certainty in your heart or that feeling of absolute confidence that that's going to happen, is because you're stuck at the question, how? I don't know how. Well, that's because you don't know the masters, and you're not studying the masters and looping through their program or through their process or through their strategies and their actions. So most people get stuck as how, and if we don't understand how the masters are getting those results, we need to go back and we need to refocus. We need to keep going until we get their level of results. So I hope this video, this steps 1 through 7 for how do we master and learn anything successfully. I hope you found this extremely worth your time. I hope this was valuable to you. And I hope that you're also beginning to think through, how could I apply this both professionally in whatever it is that you do to make money, however it is that you are focused on building your career and consistently getting better and better, but then also in your personal life. What are ways that this could be applied in your personal life? How could you improve your health with this type of understanding? How could you improve your relationships with this type of an approach? How could you improve your finances and working towards financial freedom with this type of an approach? So there's so many different ways that this application can be applied to improve both our lives and our careers. So I come out with these videos every Monday morning. Thanks so much for joining me. Again, hope you had an outstanding 4th of July, and I will see you next Monday.